got all, I went over all the hand signals with Eva, so we're ready to go. Okay. 301, shall we?
Yes.
Allegiance. Call to order, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Here. All right, how about roll call, shall we? Let's go left to right.
Rose Larkin.
Johnson, present.
Mary Rose Spalletta, present.
Wendy D. Gattano, present.
Leach, Council Liaison, present.
Shoots environmental staff present.
Okay. Quick, and we've got excused absences from the other three, is that right?
Sorry?
Excused absences from the other three?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that if you're okay with that. If you can just make a motion to excuse them, we have it on the record.
Okay, I'll make a motion to excuse the three members that aren't here.
I'll second. If we have any dirty jobs coming up, they should be theirs.
That's a good discussion to have.
But in the meantime.
They're volunteer for something now?
We can decide on that later. That wasn't part of the motion.
No, that was
Can I
not.
just ask a question about that? Because how far in advance does an excused absence need to be?
If it's reasonable.
I think it's quite lax, the whole thing, actually.
Could I give one for November? I know I'm going to be on a cruise the week in November.
I think there is a time in the statutes about it, but it's a week or two, I think.
Notice that you're supposed to.
So everybody has enough time, so if you don't have a quorum,
Right.
just time open for everybody who can make it.
Okay.
Okay,
So I'd forward that to Chad then.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, first one for the day. Very good. So, agenda? Any issues with the agenda?
No, but do we have that second speaker on there?
My understanding is he will be here.
Do we need to put that on, or?
Outerbridge. He's part of Exotic Vegetation.
Okay, good.
Here roughly 3:45, I believe.
So I move to accept the agenda as written, proposed.
Second? Okay, any opposition? Carries unanimously. Okay. Previous meeting minutes, any issues there? Found none myself.
They look good. I move to accept the minutes of.
I'll
last
second
meeting.
that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So, public comment. Do you have any public comment today? No? Do you have a guest? Why don't we move right into our current agenda items, the Carlos Point Beach Shorebird Nesting Area Management.
So Rebecca Snyder's here from the FWC to answer any questions you may have on the documents that were provided regarding the Shorebird nesting area over on Carlos Beach.
Stewardship plan. I guess my question is, I'll start, Rebecca. So has there actually been, I mean, there's options here. Who will be ascertain what the final conclusions are and the management plan or the stewardship plan that'll be put together moving forward?
This is an informal session, so my first intention with being here was just to introduce myself. My name is Becky. I go by Becky usually. My title is Regional Species Conservation Biologist. That is in FWC Management. We have a strong focus in this region. And as you all hopefully know, there's a major stronghold of beach nesting birds, listed species terns, snowy plovers, who nest on Estero Beach, a little Estero Island CW established for the protections of some of those species. But we also have a private property area habitat for our colonial species, black skimmers and least terns. So we have a long-standing agreement in place with the private property owners at the southern end of Estero Boulevard, notably the Carvelos Point Beach, to post a temporary refuge, which basically provides a sanctuary for those beach nesting birds when they arrive each year. Have a plan in place that perpetually re-establishes that white sand area as being shorebird nesting year after year. It just so happens to be favorable in the eyes of the property owners as well, who want to engage in beach management activities that maintain the white sand, eradicate some of the overgrowth of that landscape. You probably already also know that all of that sand accretion at the south end of Estero Boulevard has been moving over the course of the past decade or longer. My understanding is that it was kind of instigated by the hurricane that came through, and ever since then has just been growing.
Amazing, actually. Based on those photographs.
These light black skimmers and least terns that require clean white sand to nest on see something like that, and they're immediately attracted to it because there's not a lot of that left in Florida. So working with these private property owners to develop a shorebird management plan that be a successful cooperative relationship is really important for state-listed birds that are in a pretty dire situation. The agreement, like I said, basically establishes white sandy conditions every year after the birds are. We do not disturb them while they're nesting. They're kind of quarantined off in that posted area that we were. But then when they're done and they have been successful, we in and restore that sandy beach to nesting conditions, essentially turning it to a state in which it would have been maintained by the private property owners had there been no birds present. Right? So if they had persisted raking and permitted management throughout the season, there wouldn't have been as much vegetative overgrowth. So I'm a species conservation biologist with a specialty in ornithology. I am not a land manager, and so engaging in this agreement year after year made me realize that I need to start putting land manager eyes on the site. So I was fearful, or I have been concerned, that repeated management, tilling, other strategies that we use to restore that clean white could lead to other changes for that on that beach that would be potentially not favorable for both the birds and in the eyes of the property owners. So this plan was developed by a colleague of mine in our landowner assistance program who does have expertise in land and management, specifically private management of private properties, and a wealth of knowledge on the plant species of the region. So Mr. Pete Diamond was able to develop this plan. It is a set of guidelines that we offer to landowner that is our best technical assistance, our best scientific how to maintain, or in case maybe restore the highest quality habitat we have on that site. So what we have in the plan is not a prescription nor a contract, just a set of guidelines that outline how we can keep a favorable beach nesting habitat, aim to reduce or potentially eradicate Category 1 invasive crow's foot grass specifically, or nuisance species such as sand spurs. Both of those species thrive in disturbed habitats. This site is a managed site. It has been disturbed. It's gonna be disturbed. There's no getting around that. But what this plan aims to do is focus on a strategy that is going to reduce that disturbance by keeping the invasive species at bay and hopefully either restoring or maintaining it to be. So as I said, this plan is written for the audience of the private property owner. I'm here presenting it to you. I want to make sure that this is in alignment with what the Marine also sees as being favorable conservation strategy for coastal habitats on Fort Myers Beach. It's still in draft form as well, so I'm here to take your feedback, take note of your questions, and we do not plan to implement any portion of this plan that has not already been in place. And a lot of it we already do because of the decade or longer existing agreement that we had with the private properties, but we're not going to be officially implementing anything in accordance with this plan precisely until we get everyone in agreement about what the approach would be. We're going to use mechanical treatment to eradicate the existing vegetation this year. It's overgrown quite a lot. That mechanical treatment used at the end of season every year since the official year. But hopefully over the course of the very short off-season, Shorebird off-season is shorter and shorter every year, but over the course of the winter months, we hope to maybe come up with a strategy to start to focus on vegetative control in the spring or throughout.
Does the FWC actually perform that work then?
My program provides bird stewardship, so we provide the bird monitor service. We're monitoring productivity in the CWA, and those duties extend down to the private properties with property owners' permission and in place. So we post the temporary refuge, monitor bird nesting throughout the season. We make that no harm or harassment is presented to those birds by any beachgoer, and then we do restore, as I said, with chemical treatment to pre-nest. All other beach cleaning are the responsibility. So we will work with them throughout the season within the footprint of the temporary refuge to kind of hold up our end of the agreement. We basically have managerial responsibility for that posted area while the birds are there. But otherwise, this document is in best practices, best recommendations from us on how they can health of their entire.
Is spraying like a vinegar acting kind of compound, is that part of the process you do now?
I've always used herbicide up until now. This was the first kind of a moratorium on the use of herbicide. Really how bad it could get because no one wants to spray herbicide near a beach. We have in every other year, and they have always been successful. We've always fledged on that site. This year we for the sake of time and resources, did not do anything. That has happened. It's been the responsibility of the backpack sprayer with spot treatments as minimally as possible. Again, creating.
Were you using like a glyphosate or using a natural?
2% glyphosate. But another motivation that I have for this plan to potentially employ the expertise of herbicide technician, the option that, that you all and the landowner, because again, we're in species conservation, have trained herbicide applicator technicians in our agency who will be able to do training at, with responsibility and at the right. But there's chemical treatment options outlined in this plan that are alternatives to glyphosate as well, like the vinegar or the seawater. So any one of those chemical options would be a possibility. With the amount of invasive species that are present on the site right now, our agency would recommend the use of an herbicide like glyphosate. We use it in our invasive plant management program, and if you are seeking more information about basically scientific guidance on the use of that chemical substance in coastal environments, then I can point you in the right direction, but that's about where the extent of my expertise ends.
That is something that Murph has gone over pretty extensively.
Yeah, so,
And we are not a big fan of glyphosate in kind of these aquatic environments.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's exactly why I wanted to come here and introduce myself, because I don't want to recommend a treatment that isn't appropriate for this site.
Rebecca, to just review again, so my understanding from what you said is that since you've had this agreement with the landowners, you have been chemically treating with glyphosate up until this past year?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and this year you found that it's obviously grown like crazy, especially the crowfoot's grass, and then of course the sand spurs. And is the issue that's prompted all this also have to do with, there's an issue of sepsis in the black skimmers?
Yeah, there's
is
a
there
hypothesis.
Are you suggesting there's a correlation between that, or?
We don't know that. There is a hypothesis that sand spurs could be irritating the skin of the fledgling black skimmers while they're walking around, and that irritation could be making them more vulnerable to an unknown pathogen that's in the environment. But we don't know that. We don't have any evidence for that. We have not tested it, and we have not isolated the pathogen yet either. The septic arthritis, when it occurred on Big Marco Pass CWA last season, the isolated pathogens were biological. E. coli, I think, was among them, and maybe a MRSA pathogens. So we don't know yet where it's coming from, and we're not suggesting that there's any correlation between the two other than a hypothesis.
Another kind of question is that it seems to me like, especially at the end of the season, when we rake, we essentially plant things like sand spurs and the seeds from the crow's foot. Have you ever thought about some more aggressive, kind of like a sifter or something that might be able to pull the seeds out of the sand? Is that feasible?
There is a chapter, I believe, or a section in the document about passive controls. We did do some manual removal this year to try to reduce the tank. It's very laborious, as you can imagine, and not super fun on the fingertips either. So, so yes, eradicating sand spurs is a painstaking job. In years past, we've also tried a drag cloth to see if we could pick up as many spurs as possible. But you're precisely right. We have a situation in which when the aggressive species go to seed, we cannot treat them with equal level of aggression because of the presence of beach and sea turtles, of course. But we cannot address seeding with as much as immediacy because it's seeding while birds are seeding, while birds are hatching. So we need to come up with other ways to approach the challenge, and mechanical treatment is what we've used consistently every year. to truly eradicate the emergent growth. But both of these species, sandspurs and crowsfoot grass, are known to thrive when disturbed. So chopping up all that crowsfoot grass and replanting all those sandspurs is farming, and we're making it worse and worse and worse, which is not good, again, for anyone involved. So once again, that's why I was inspired to come up with this plan to see how can we use the tools in our toolbox to try to cut back the amount of nasty stuff that's out there.
Rebecca, am I right in that this is really not anything new? It's what you've been doing, but we're going to codify it, and we're going to help you.
Exactly, yes. We have had a plan in place that was developed when a need was very dire, when we needed to conserve nesting shorebirds, probably the largest nesting colony in Lee County. In fact, I know it's the largest nesting colony of beach nesting birds in Lee County, and one of the largest ones in the region. The populations were declining precipitously, and therefore were listed as a state threatened species. So anything that we could do to earn the trust of the landowner, to get the cooperation in place to protect that nesting colony, was what we ended up with. And so I think that it has worked well at maintenance, and I would like to see it work well for a lot longer without the unforeseen repercussions of beach erosion or other things that could potentially be generating with the repeated tilling and repeated use of other aggressive treatment.
Great. It's great to hear that you're doing. How long has this been going on, that you've been working on this bird colony?
The agreement has been in place since 2015. So the first year that it was implemented, the temporary refuge was implemented in 2016 for the first time. In years prior to that, there was an unofficial kind of approach, but the strategy was a bit more combative, I'll say. So the fact that we're able to pre-post now with the cooperation of the property owners is very important to us, and I'd like to keep it that way because it's saving birds' lives.
Because it does depend on their cooperation. If they say no, the problem.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Right. And would you say that our bird colony is still a good size? It's still an important part of southwestern Florida's effort at
Absolutely.
keeping these numbers up?
Yeah, the colony has been, maintenance numbers has been growing. And so it really is quite a stronghold for the region. And it would be a tragedy to lose that habitat because there's so little habitat left in this area. So, I mean, just looking at an aerial, you don't see big tracts, like the posting is 12 acres and the size of the beach is I think 50 acres, something like that, between all three condominium associations plus the single family homes. So if you can put yourselves in the eyes of a bird and you're flying over and you see, wow, like there's some beach right there, because every other beach is gone or covered in umbrellas and beach chairs.
Right. Thank you.
Becky, the previous applications you had mentioned were glyphosate. Did you say that they were broadcast or they were just spot sprayed?
Spot sprayed with a backpack sprayer, as minimally as possible. But once again, by admittedly an unlicensed applicator, because it was part of the job duties and responsibilities of the Shorebird technician, who generally is a seasonal biologist, and a recent graduate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the training on that, like I said, admittedly is bare minimum, and we do have licensed and well-experienced herbicide application technicians in the area who are willing to come out and use professional equipment to apply any chemical treatment that's best suited for coastal environments. at the concentration, the timing that is best suited for managing that vegetation.
Right, now, on that subject of timing, so this is actually as soon as the nesting season is over, that's when the application has been applied, and then followed by then the mechanical raking and.
Right, so historically, we have spot treated within the footprint of the posted area, literally around nests, as close as we can get, without disturbing the birds, just to keep the vegetation at maintenance. And I should say, as a side note, we do have anecdotal kind of observations from a neighboring site in Charlotte County that is host to a colony of nesting least terns. That colony of least terns, which is also a very large colony, has abandoned for 2 years in a row because the vegetation has grown too much for them to feel comfortable continuing with nesting. So they will arrive in March and they're like, look, a great, white sandy beach.
Right.
And then they'll fail their first time due to predation or an early season storm. They'll try again, or they'll try a third time, but by that third time, the vegetation has grown too much for them to continue. So their nesting season, due to vegetative overgrowth of invasive species, non-native dune vegetation, I'm sure, their nesting season is truncated. So they have a much shorter window of time to be successful. And so in years past, now there could have been some benefit to a mild management, the mild use of chemicals within the refuge to prolong that opportunity for least terns and black skimmers to nest at Carlos Beach. They did nest through the end of August this year, but there really was there was not a lot of nesting opportunity left for black skimmers. So surely, given the way phenological changes are happening now, they may have tried one more time. We didn't have a hurricane come early. There could have been a final attempt to bring them nesting into September, and that didn't happen. So by controlling the vegetation throughout the season, we may be fostering more of that opportunity. Again, we only have anecdotal experience with that. And then the plans that have been in place in years past, according to the landowner agreement, has been to prompt as much vegetative die-off as possible before tilling, so that we're not propagating those plants when we go through with the box tiller. So this year we're not spraying. We will chop up and we will be propagating those plants. It's going to come back with a vengeance next year, I'm sure. But again, my naive understanding about herbicide suggests that really you need to target the leafy green vegetation. Every plant out there has gone to seed, or the sandspurs have gone to seed. So spraying will not affect that seed bank that we've added to the system. Rosefoot grass, being an exotic, actually flowers and seeds in the fall because it's an opposite schedule. I think it's a South Asian, maybe African species. So it does have a reverse kind of like annual cycle. So we could maybe make an impact on crowsfoot grass if we sprayed. But once again, the mechanical treatment for crowsfoot grass specifically makes it thrive. It really, really likes that quite a lot.
Well, and it says here that the box blades with the front or rear side blades that would filter out all the vegetation are not allowed.
Yeah, do you know, Chad, if that? So we hire Mr. Bill Perry to till the temporary refuge. His machine is able to chop, or my understanding is that his machine is able to chop the organic material up enough that it doesn't need to be then groomed out of the system. But I think there are other machines that aren't able to chop as much, and then they need to groom the vegetation out of the system. Is that right, Chad?
So Your question, box blades are not allowed on the beach unless, you know, they're permitted by the state and permitted by the town manager. So, see them out. The tilling, the description is that they till, like one time coming up very soon, hopefully, September, and then 3 successive months after, so September, or November, December. By that time, the dry season is on set and very much growth. I did one tilling a pre-season, pre-shorebird nesting season in March, just to hit the growth and birds.
What is used? What is used?
They use a tiller. I don't think we're not using box blades to grade out there.
Okay. And the tiller, though, does not sift the material.
They do even they do have sifters, but they're pretty bad for the beach generally. I think they take like large shells. They take all kinds of things out of there.
Are you talking about more like a barber rake?
Well, yeah.
That's something that we've used for kind of mass accumulation of red drift algae when we've had that issue. They'll pick up things.
I'm just wondering, because it's on page 13, that it's not allowed, but it's like, well, that sounds like a good solution to popping up all the invasive plants and...
This document was written with the intention of being all-encompassing. Like every best practice we could possibly research and suggest is in there. So I think if there's a need for a caveat that says clearly under conditions prescribed by the state or by the municipality, then of course owners would be in compliance with that. So if there's something that we need to scratch from the document, we certainly will. But again, this is I'm thinking of it like a toolbox, you know, like these are the suite of options you have available. Which one is going to be the best suited for your property?
How do you use seawater?
That's really interesting research that Pete found that I haven't read the primary document on myself, but it would be, I believe that the research he came across suggested that seawater at a certain concentration changed the pH or the salinity enough to kill the plant. So we would use the same equipment as we would use for spraying anything else, herbicide or anything else, gather it from wherever we could. If we weren't, if it wasn't appropriate to gather it from, the past itself, then we would probably use pool salt or some other salt that we can.
I imagine that would be crow's foot, maybe more effective for that since it's invasive. Where I know the sandspurs, maybe they're
Probably
pretty
use
salt
distilled water,
tolerant.
yeah.
I know some of the area on the condo side of that floods in some high tides and often.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the salt water actually comes up. I think when that flooding happens, it's usually runoff from major rain events, so it's probably more freshwater or storm runoff that's coming out of the system and in.
What type of tractor does the town own?
Like the specification of tractor.
Well, just what's its capabilities? Is there any additional capabilities that has that would be of?
Beyond Mr. Perry's, no.
Yeah, well, no,
It's pretty big.
Yeah, I mean the way that. I don't remember if that actually collects in a hopper.
Well, so that's so that is a Lee County attachment to the tractor, the barber rake that you can collect material. Maybe that's something that could be employed. Lee County certainly lets us borrow it on request. We have to check into it to see if this would be an appropriate application and what would be the benefits.
I would do a better job of actually collecting the plant material itself, correct? I mean, without having to chop it up.
Right.
Actually collect more of the seed,
We need a
eliminate the
harvester,
seed blank.
right? That's
Yeah,
what we need is
literally,
a farming harvester that'll cut all that stuff and then just chop her all up and we'll burn it in the backyard.
I think that was in fact one of Pete's first recommendations was mowing,
Yeah,
because that really would get rid of the seeds, get rid of the seed heads. Again, we are caught in between a rock and a hard place because we cannot mow over shorebird nests or sea turtle nests.
but to go through it now and cut down what's growing now and chop it up.
Like vacuum it with the lawnmower?
Yeah,
basically,
something
I'm
like
thinking
that.
End of season, I guess, it's this mid-seasonal application that's needed, or control, it sounds like, is really the challenge.
I know I've done that where I've, used a lawnmower to vacuum up leaves that have fallen, so I wonder if you could be effective at gathering seeds. I wouldn't want to be the one emptying the bag.
It's discussed in here, yeah.
So once again, this is a draft plan. I personally do not want to implement anything that doesn't have your review and your consideration, which is exactly why I'm here, like I said. So I hope that we can still consider this an adaptive document. I think that there's already been some revisions by the request of the property owner are congruent with what they hope to see for their beach. But everything is sound science. Everything is with the vision of having a healthy habitat, a healthy disturbed habitat.
So the homeowner's role is just to agree. In other words, they're not going out and doing any of this actual spraying or raking or tilling or
Correct.
anything.
Yes. The homeowners are not licensed to apply herbicide. So unless there's a change in the stance of this community on that, then it would be FWC only that would be applying that treatment. And we are responsible for the tilling and management within the posted area, but the private properties are responsible for everything else. So their raking that they do throughout the summer is 100% their responsibility. And Carlos Point specifically does do their own tilling in-house as well. So we contract the beach cleaning services one time a year as an agency, and everything else is the property owner.
What happens if people move and new owners come in? And there's a few single-family homes.
Yeah, the single-family homes have not been resistant to any component of the Shorebird plan. They don't reside in those homes while the shorebirds are nesting, so that makes things a lot easier on me. And I have a relationship with the Housing Association boards for both condominiums. So I work pretty closely with Castle Beach and Carlos Point. We do meet with their board president. In the case of Castle Beach, the board president. In the case of Carlos Point, the entire board, every year to review the Shorebird plan. And those are the folks that have been given this draft document. I don't believe that it's been shared with residents, but you're right. The residents will need to be in good favor for whatever the strategy is, because they'll be the ones voting on the board.
Becca, you have numbers from 2016 for lease turns and black skimmers?
Is that what's in there? Or,
As far as productivity?
yeah, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I can.
In general, have they been increasing, decreasing, about the
In
same?
general, yeah, stable or increasing. I don't think we've seen like a statistically significant positive change in the number of beach nesting birds, but they've been maintained in large numbers at the site, and I attribute that to the pre-posting, the disturbance, or should say lack of disturbance. And the site, even prior to 2016, has been monitored by our seasonal technician. So all of those data are available in the Florida Shorebird database. But again, the kind of acreage of beach nesting habitat has been there only in the past 10 years or so. We probably didn't have comparable numbers of black skimmers and lease turns on the site simply because it wasn't the size that it was now.
Well, Island's End is not part of this program?
Islands End, at this time, is not attractive to the birds. So they have not ventured over there. We do consider Islands End to be a partner in the sense that they have given us authorization to access their property when roving chicks begin to move over to that part of the beach. But it's not nesting habitat at this time. So it would really just be foraging habitat for flightless chicks. We don't post foraging areas for flightless chicks, but we do post chick crossing signs and other educational signs to warn people that there might be vulnerable little babies in the area.
Is there an opportunity to maybe try a couple, to mix and match? Like you said, this is kind of a toolbox. I personally would love to see how, if the enhanced seawater would seem to have the least amount of impact on the environment. At least for the crowfoot grass. And I guess we don't know at this point how it works on the sand spur. We think we might, based on our knowledge of horny little monsters.
It kind of mimics more the natural process that forms these, right? When they get overwashed regularly and get flooded with seawater, and that's what keeps vegetation from growing. Now this is high enough where it doesn't nearly happen there.
Right.
This research is not in the plan because it's not precisely about vegetation management, but one other piece of information due to a recent publication is that slope and elevation play a key role in beach nesting bird success. So keeping the elevation a little bit higher keeps the sand drier, and therefore we don't see as much, we don't have conditions for growth. Birds fertilize the site, so there is always going to be a conducive, nutrients in the system for stuff like that to grow. But if it's a little bit higher and drier, at least those plants are that they might need to really thrive. But I agree. I think that the seawater was really attractive to me as well as something that could have potentially have lower impact on not just beach nesting birds, but native dune vegetation that we don't want to have a negative impact on. But it's definitely worth exploring. I do believe there's a portion of the plan that suggests a plot strategy, so we could keep small sections, small plots of vegetation to sample what is the best approach, but that would need landowner buy-in, to do an experiment on their property.
Right. I'd hope they'd be open to something like that, based on the fact that it's a lot less disruptive. And the other advantage thing of enhanced seawater is the ability to just broadcast it too. I mean, that's obviously a huge way.
It's cheap.
Very cost effective.
Another thing that was suggested to me by a bird monitor was there's a pole that's attached to maybe a propane tank or something of that sort, where they put it in the ground and it basically burns it. I'm not sure how much birds are disturbed by somebody walking around, but that would repair the issue of vinegar being too noxious and the seawater being too wet, maybe.
FWC is a big fan of prescribed fire, so I think that really is an important tool for managing undesirable plant growth. Don't think that we're going to be able to use a flamethrower near the birds, even if it's underground.
It's pretty contained. I wouldn't say it's a flamethrower.
Yeah, it's certainly worth investigating because I think that would be a pretty powerful tool, and I can ask Pete about that, whether he knows anything. I think I'll say it again and again, though, we'll always be as conservative as possible while the birds are present, which means that vegetation is going to grow. We don't really have a lot of choices around active nests. Certainly, yeah, I really appreciate your consideration. Like I said, I am am not the author of the document. I wish that I had more expertise on treating vegetation, especially if it's a treatment method that is going to grow birds, because that was what we really need in the region. We need to be growing birds and not invasives. So thank you again for reviewing it today, and I'm available to discuss further, even outside of this setting. We'll be working on it.
And what's the, when do you suppose you'll be presenting this to the landowners, or what's the goal, or what's the date?
They've reviewed a draft. I think it's the same version that you have in your hand. And we hope to have a final but yet adaptive version before shorebird nesting season starts next year in March. So we'll be working on it throughout the winter to come to kind of final strategy. But even when we decide on one tool, one or a combination of tools to use, I want to make sure the document stays an all-encompassing, this is what you can do for the next 10 years to manage your site.
Is there anything in particular that you can share regarding their input at all? Have they shared input to landowners at all, or?
Yeah, it was well received, although there is mixed perspective on the use of glyphosate, and I think that once again, my expertise is limited on that, and I would like to make sure that you all and all of the private property owners are as educated as possible before making a decision on whether that is an appropriate use of appropriate tool use for this system. So if there's a desire to have someone from FWC talk about invasive plant management, I can certainly set that up. I understand that you have an exotic control expert coming up today, so hopefully they can provide some more guidance on what strategies to use. But our agency does not view it as our agency does view glyphosate as a viable option for controlling vegetation.
Good for that, yeah. Any questions for Becky?
No, I was leaning towards the saltwater, and I've looked at Roundup and some of the negative impacts that it has on humans and animals, but I have not looked at the aquatic and terrestrial version of it that's cited here. So
very important distinction to make, that we're not using off-the-shelf Roundup. We're using something that that University of Florida has researched and recommended. We would only use the best recommended substance for coastal environments available.
Okay. Anything else, Chad?
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
We applaud your efforts and are with you.
Thank you, Becky.
Fantastic that you came and spoke, so. Okay. Let's move on to our next agenda item here, the exotic vegetation.
and I don't see David Outerbridge, but there's a whole lot here, so we can
probably get started.
start
Huh?
either way.
Good plan, actually. Isn't it?
Well, and it got longer because originally there were just 2 objectives, and the first 2 objectives were the ones that I submitted to the Lee County Extension Service, to the Master Gardener Coordinator, to get the project approved with them. Then, following our discussions over the last several months, it was pointed out that we needed to add some other objectives, which was the raising the public awareness and then drafting a vegetation management plan. David Outerbridge said he was interested in participating with the discussion on the vegetation management plan, but we're not here yet.
Not here yet, so,
We'll go.
yeah, we can talk a little bit about what you're.
The first item is already completed, and had received that information the last meeting.
Yeah, right.
Yes, so there was 700 and some odd sites. And so he has that on an Excel spreadsheet, 761 properties that were listed, and he actually has those properties in his possession. Then the second one is the stuff that you just got this morning. You know, you got this hearing document yesterday, but the pictures were this morning of what we could possibly do with the data. So there's the option, and the option was shown on Biscayne Bay, just to use some other place in Florida. You know, you can go and map every single invasive plant we found by different colored dots. They don't all have to be labeled, they just could be the dots on the map, and there could be a code that, you know, yellow stood for Brazilian peppers, and orange was whatever, green Australian pine. So we could do that.
Is that GIS or is that?
This is Google Maps Pro.
Google Maps Pro, but how do you get the actual feed the data in? Is it GPS or? I mean, I don't have GPS or just
You got the street
you have the
addresses.
right? Yeah.
Well, the street addresses.
It's not a preserve or
And
anything.
also these days, you can actually be on your phone and literally you're marking it on like a GPS.
Could do that, sort of like the turtle time people do, marking a nest.
Right.
We didn't do that, we just recorded addresses,
Right.
so
Yeah,
this is a little,
addresses are good, yeah.
and I'm sure in some cases, if you zoomed in on Google Earth Pro, you could actually spot an Australian pine, especially if it was over 6 feet, but that's almost invasion of invasive plants, so that's not the case either, I know. And then, under the next one, we could pick subgroups. I mean, we could target something like the ground cover plants or some shrubs or trees, and then you could just get a map with those plants targeted versus all of them. There is some small chance, maybe the chance is getting larger, that you can plot all of them on one map. And then Google Earth Pro is actually working on where you can then extract specific data and create more additional maps by pulling data. I think that is a work in progress. It doesn't seem to be finalized just yet. So right now it would be, you know, doing them sort of one at a time. We'll see. Then of course just in one specific plant. That was something I was kind of hoping we could decide today because it takes a long time. I mean, it took a long time to just record all the data, and now it all be recorded again.
I think if we have too much on there, it becomes overwhelming. You know, if we can narrow it down and just have trees on one, maybe, that you could look at it and say, okay, these are our big problems.
Okay.
I'm just,
I wonder if you can do that with Google,
don't
once you
know.
get it into Google Maps, you can like turn on and off different things.
okay,
Yeah,
so
you-
put it all on one and then pull it out by pieces.
Yeah,
You can, I know with the use of GIS, you can. I'm not sure if Google Maps is that sophisticated, but it may be. And then what really great is the way that you could take the entry, the data you already have, extract that in a format that you could import into Google Maps instead of have to go through and put everything in.
I've been told it has to all be re-entered. All the dots on the map have to be re-entered, you know, from the spreadsheet. There's no simple way of doing it, yeah. So that's 761 dots, at least, plus the multiple dots. You're right, though, it would be a lot. Because when you look at if there's 761 properties, and some of them have obviously more than one invasive plant on them.
Right.
And you would have, and that's not even the extra write-in ones, that's just the main ones that we were targeting, you would have dots upon dots upon dots. It would be hard to see. So even if we had to do 3 maps and do, you know, the ground cover kind of plants and the shrubs and the trees.
if I look at something and it's too busy, I feel like, oh, wow, how am I even going to figure out what's what here?
Mhm.
Whereas if I can just look at one map and say, oh, these are all the big trees we need to think about. They're all our Australian pines and our Brazilian peppers, you know, all the big ones on one, and then
What will we use it for? this visual representation, I mean, it's a great kind of,
If there's any areas that have high density of some specific invasive plant, or I don't,
name an
it's
area.
visual, some people like visual stuff better than looking at a
Mexican-
listing.
Right, Mexican Petuniaville, something like that, we're gonna say,
Right.
right?
And that also will indicate where native plants are suffering, and it's native plants that are usually supporting our habitats, and the go along with all that. Seems to me high-density areas, the ones you might,
Yeah, I would agree.
Then as Steve said, what are we going to do with it? So
Oh, something, I mean, it'd be useful, we just have to determine what its use would be. Nice to have is different than need to have, but.
get Chad's flamethrower out.
Mhm.
Eradicate.
Right. Phone that drops glyphosate bombs on them. What would be involved in doing, is there a plan we can help to do that? I mean, to actually make that a reality? What,
It's just man hours of entering all the data. And there's some master gardeners or a master gardener or two that would probably be willing to help.
help to, it's something easy. Okay.
More than one person can access this file or whatever, where the data needs to be put into.
Well, right now, the file is only in Chad's possession and mine.
Okay.
Because it is, I mean, it's people's private property in a lot of cases, or private personal property, so nobody else has seen it, which is why you have Key Biscayne, and this is not, true data, this is bogus, made up information, just so that you could see what it might look like.
I was wondering why the hell they had, that's all they had to preserve, right?
Yeah, that is the preserve, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, just so you know, there is a street-side exotic plant removal budget item. Budget that we're going to be.
Great tell.
We do have money for it. Now, that money can be used for replacement plants. You can go in a hurry if you want to remove big trees. That can get expensive in a hurry.
Right, how much you got there, Councilman?
Right now, it says 5,000.
1,000. Art. Or do we get it higher?
Well, you also have Murph has a budget item in here itself for what, 10, I think it is? Is, intended for bags. If we go down the bag road again.
10 was the number, yeah.
But you can, if the money's, it's easier to get it through council. You've already got money allocated to use it for something else as opposed to coming up with new money.
Right.
If you're gonna blow your entire savings on one project, you might be able to do that, but,
Would be the most impactful, I think. Also, we don't, this, well, maybe we should continue on with the plan here and,
Then come back to that?
yeah, talk about that.
Okay, so then there's the notification to property owners. There's the possibility of a hotline. Personally, I actually think that's the easiest because they can just look at the spreadsheet if someone calls in and talks to somebody sitting at the desk and say, oh, I'd like to know if I have invasive plants and here's my address, and they can just pull it up and it's all alphabetical and here's their street number and it's all numerical order and yes you do, no you don't. This is what's checked off. But that's also getting the town of Fort Myers Beach to appoint a person or person. Mailing letters, I think, is expensive, and I don't know. People would receive that. Designing a link on the Fort Myers Beach Town website for property owners to access their property information. Actually, I think that is the most difficult thing of all of this. That would be just someone to log in and see their information on their property.
Right. Although, I have a question here on just the privacy of us observing a exotic, Class 1 exotic plant on somebody's property. That's like, same as saying your house is blue, or or there's a house on this property, or there's a garage, or what, I mean, is there a privacy issue there? I think we have any attorneys
My
here,
understanding is no, and I've had a conversation with the attorney about this.
Okay,
There's no expectation of privacy if you're viewing this from a public space.
correct, yeah.
You're not going up and looking in the windows. You weren't, right?
We didn't even look in their backyards.
Right,
So, you're not trespassing on the property, you're looking at it from public, then there's no expectations of privacy.
right, okay, so I see there, I think there that we can be open about it, to just say you have a class 1 invasive exotic plant.
How many different addresses are we talking about?
And, but with a disclaimer,
761?
but with that disclaimer that says, we're not, we're not,
Right, there is that.
nothing's 100% sure, but we, our best guess here, based on, the training, is that you do have one.
And there's a lot of, free things you can do too. Well, not free per se, but not really cost them MRF is. One is that once we're prepared, once the data is in a manageable way, that we can put our information officer to set out on her social media channels and things that we've done the survey. If you're interested in what's on your land, and get a hold of them.
It's one of the best ways to get it out there is those advisories. She's got the newsletter. I mean, I don't know how many tools now she uses. I'm signed up for all of them, so every day it seems like I'm getting information from the town digitally. What if there was something in there that would then drive them to the website, where it would say, or that's where the map would come in handy, because that doesn't necessarily, somebody could actually look up their address on the map without actually saying, who they are, what, basically where the.
Right. Well, there are no names on the spreadsheet because I don't know who they are.
Right, okay.
And there may be, maybe we could, come up with an email address or too. So Chad doesn't get flooded. Maybe we can.
He likes it. Doesn't get enough love by email. I know I subscribed him to a couple of different things in my off time.
Our warranty information, that kind of stuff.
Right. So I think that, there's some sound ideas there to get the word out. Slideshow.
And then the disclaimer message was actually written by David Outerbridge, who did send me a message saying that he's unable to attend, that he's hoping to participate in future opportunities.
Okay.
And he thought that the statement of our records show invasive plants and or likely invasive plants were identified on your property covered it. He ran that by the University of Florida folks, and
With that too, okay.
so
I love it.
it's simple, yeah.
We just want to flower up the message. No plant pun intended. To.
That pun was intended.
Council mentioned. So you can tell them, you can put in a thing about the value of native plants and the problem with invasive plants. There's the replacements that'll do better on your property, or less fertilizer, et cetera, and then tell them, yeah, and you've got one.
All right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So do you, we'll move on. I was thinking you had mentioned something earlier about that information that's available already for
From
those
Sanibel?
clients. Yeah, or from
Yeah.
MyFast, or they actually have.
From Sanibel, the
It
number
says, sort
4?
of, if you have this, then you can
Oh,
plant this, or here's something.
no, they have, they're listed under number
Okay, so-
4, the city of Sanibel, and they gave permission to us to use them. We can use them
Alright.
directly if we cite them as their creations and whatever. If we decide to label them under Fort Myers Beach information, then we have to make sure we include Sanibel and who actually did the work, because sometimes it was volunteers, sometimes hired people. So we can use, and this is the ones that you, the directions on how to find them on the Sanibel website. The Native Wildflower Guide we can use, a slideshow of native plants of Sanibel, which is fabulous. City of Sanibel's horticulturally available native plant list, and then the link is not really theirs, it's just a link, but it's a really good one for the Atlas of Florida Vascular Plants. we could add others, but then the next thing down is, yes, we had talked about if you take out this invasive plant, put in something else, if we want to do that. I have a basic slideshow that I made up with Stephen Brown from the UF-IFAS folks to show the Master Gardener volunteers what the plants look like that we were supposed to be identifying when we walked around on the streets. So this would just be to go in between each set of those 10 key plants and add in, you could plant this instead. I mean, it would be taking what is already in existence and adding more to it.
Perfect, actually.
Not gonna happen overnight, but that is something on and
We have, I mean, do we have space on the website to carve out like a MRF kingdom?
vegetation
fiefdom?
section.
Well, just a natural resource, I mean, technically it'd be a
Right.
natural resource
Right.
section. I mean, MRFs, but call it MRF if we. No, it's just yeah. Do we need to talk to our favorite PIO about something like that, or is that just, that's sort of the,
So
Sure.
just exotic invasive education page.
is there a natural resource area
Yeah, we
that
have
then you can navigate to these subjects that we talk about, short, I don't know.
We have like
Fertilizer?
a sea turtle page. We
Yeah, you
have-
put maybe, if there's a managed beach zone stuff, that content would be there and what stuff looks, just those types of things. That you can index different subjects of stuff that we can reference. How does that, what's involved with that? Is there just requests into,
It would be developing the content, so gathering the pictures, the
what's the
information on
content, yeah?
different plants.
Addition of the site's
Plotting it
usually
in.
the easy part, it's just the content, always need the content. Okay.
It's not a monumental task. Expected to do it and get done.
Organization, wow, it's pretty exciting, actually, I think.
Town council needs to approve that.
I got like images and stuff, I'm used to seeing them, so I gotta make sure they public, they're.
So how is it going to work? Let's say we're gonna tell people we've done this study, we will give them all the rationale behind, invasive plants and why we need to get rid of them. Then we're gonna say there's 780 properties that have invasive plants on them, we've identified them. If you think you're one, how do you check? And what do you do?
Well, then we would go to that slideshow. We would see, the thing is, there needs to be a repository of education for the landowner, property owner. So if we talk about this, or we talk about something else in any of the other agenda items we talk about, let's say we do actually put a vegetation management plan in that says, no class 1. It'll be in the ordinance, but it's always easier for them to go to a browser to find it versus going through the land development code to figure out where these ordinances are hidden and stuff like that. And it's also in more plain English to say, here are this particular case, I would say, yeah, we drive into this repository on the web that says, here's the map, if we can make the map, and find your location on here and see if you have one. And we, if there's a better way to communicate with them, again, by mail is the only way I can think, but that's probably gonna be prohibitive based on the cost. Somehow to drive them there, whether it's through the advisories, hey, we went out and we found out 781 of you have invasive species on your property and it's not
So
good.
people are gonna want, no, is it me? And if it's me, what is it? How are they gonna find out if it's their property?
Click this link on the advisory page and boom, it takes you right to the website that then brings them to the page
They're
that
gonna
says,
see a map.
well, they'll see some tools
Or
there.
the
They'll see a
Excel
map,
spreadsheet.
they'll see the little slides they can click on,
Okay, and
slideshow.
they'll find their address on there.
Right, they can, navigate it like you would a map and say, okay, here I am on Pescadora and I'm down here and I'm 5 houses from the bay, this is my place, and there's a
Okay, so I can
purple dot on
access,
it.
I can access anybody's information. I look on
Yeah,
there and
I
I
mean,
can
I'm
tell
just,
everybody.
theoretically, we're
Okay.
talking,
Right,
is
because
what
you're
I'm
saying
saying.
it's not public, it's
Right.
not private. So
Okay, so that's all going to be up there, and anybody who's interested can look at it, and then they'll see what the problem is at that address, and they'll be able to and decide what they can put in its place, or what we would recommend
All right,
That's
we can
ideal.
add that to the basic slideshow that she has. And then, but also there may be other, there's native plant guides, I mean, there's other stuff in this repository.
People have
Okay.
to be very careful that, a lot of people go to like Home Depots
All
and
right.
just buy plants.
Right.
And they sell everything, including invasives, and people think they go there that this plant is okay because Home Depot is. I
Yeah.
think it's really important to make sure that they understand. They need the full description of the plant with the, whatever that extra,
Right.
so they can make sure that if they're going to a native plant.
We are requesting that they, that the idea here is that we're getting rid of, we would like to get rid of these exotic invasives. I think I told you last meeting, I had this aha moment when I was walking down,
Oh, yeah, they're planting Mexican.
and they're putting in
petunias.
Mexican petunias, like, I mean, there's four home, I suppose, on the beach property is just plastering Mexican petunias everywhere, planting them. I mean, and I'm thinking, what are we doing here? We just identified all these, and then we're asking people to get rid of them, but yet there's nothing, so I told you that analogy I had about mopping up the water so quick, you don't take a minute to actually turn the faucet off and stop the water from flowing out of the kitchen sink.
One other point to that is that some time ago, I think I brought up the possibility of adding to your agenda, coming up with a landscaper certification, like Sanibel has. And they have, that's part of the certification is you have to go through, on their property, they have a bunch of native plants, and you have to be able to go through and identify some native plants. But, somebody was probably planting those Mexican petunias.
Oh, yeah, no, there's a
Landscaping
landscaper,
company.
absolutely, yeah, and there was no, I mean, I didn't get a name, not that that would have mattered, but yeah, they were clearly landscapers, it was a commercial operation, but as Rose said here on project objectives, number 4 is to draft a vegetation management plan. I mean, first and foremost, if you have that plan, then, these commercial guys can't be doing it, they can be cited for it. If we were walking by there and we saw that, we can say, hey, I'm a beach Karen, I'm gonna call the cops on you, and they're gonna run down and tell you can't put those in. But I mean, right now, there's nothing stopping anybody from putting them in.
And it's the same thing with applying glyphosate and fertilizer and all that kind of stuff, right? Is it certification, like make sure you know that the guy who's being paid, $10 an hour or whatever.
Right.
His
Well,
company is,
to abide, though, to our ordinances.
right.
Right now, what I'm saying is I don't think we have a vegetation management ordinance, do we?
So, in the EC we do, you're allowed to plant native dune vegetation in the environmental critical zone. In the development order section, I believe there's some language about moving exotics or not planting exotic vegetation. It's more for commercial type properties. I mean, I talked to the guy who planted petunias. He said that variety is not so much sure about that.
All right.
It's like a northern Mexican petunia, maybe?
Yeah.
It's Oaxacan.
But to your point, I don't have any teeth. They plant that.
do that,
or-
yeah. Prohibited, basically. I mean, and so should these go hand in hand? I mean, like I said, the project objectives is here, but does that need to be something that's sort of mainstreamed right in there to become the basis of this, to say, and oh, by the way, we've noticed that there's 781 properties here that have these. I don't know if there's a grandfather, I don't know how that we would approach that, whether through grandfather, but I mean, Australia.
One way the state does it with each is if you want to permit a triple CL permit, then you have to remove all the exotic vegetation at the end of your project. So the effective way to relatively exotic vegetation.
There are requirements, like you can't just remove native vegetation. If you have
This is exotic,
Yeah,
sorry.
but I'm saying the other side of that.
There are,
so
yeah.
there are quite a few regulations already. It's probably good to review them all, because I know that, right, there's
Pages
protected
of native
vegetation.
trees, you're not supposed to be allowed to remove more than 3 in a year, but I've seen a property clear-cutted of sable palms before, really.
Well, and Sanibel has a policy where if it's already there, it can be maintained until
Right, well, I mean, there has to be
Your
some kind,
property,
you
yeah.
can't force everybody to go out and spend money taking down Australian pines or whatever, digging up
Right.
everything.
And even
you know.
Mexican petunias, you can drive around over there and see beds of them.
Yeah, but the idea, I think, is that it would prevent the commercial landscapers are the ones that would be really held accountable. I mean, the property owner would in the end, but the landscapers would say, okay, Fort Myers Beach you can't put any class ones in here, boom, so that it gets rid of and pepper, Mexican petunia, whatever, the common ones they like to plant. Like it's all in vain unless we stop them from putting them back in. We're asking them to remove them, but yet their neighbor who wasn't cited is not saying, hey, when you dig those up, can you take those and put them over here?
The two seem to come in hand. If you develop a vegetation management plan, and I think there are some caveats with the state, they have some, preemptive things they've done.
Oh,
so
there are,
you're allowed to do
absolutely, yeah.
whatever you want. But come up with something that conforms to the state, and then maybe look at coming up with a certification for the landscaper, similar to what Sanibel has, just so we have a way of making sure that the word gets out.
I mean, I'm just personally of the opinion that there's nothing really desirable about these class 1 invasives. I mean, they're,
You don't need them.
no, I don't think anybody, and obviously I'm speaking for a town here, but I mean, are they going to get up and fight and say, no, we want air potatoes and stuff like that. We want to go out and buy them and plant them. But that would also, I guess what made me think of that is that would also be in that area to say, okay, and by the way, here are the ones that you're not allowed to even plant.
So there is nothing in existence now. We don't have any management plan at all, Chad, right?
And that, under number 5, there's varying levels in my mind. You can do just the very basics
I
of.
didn't even,
Right.
I got ahead of myself. I didn't
You were
realize
in there
it was
for,
there.
well, we can skip through you got through the slideshow but the publicity in the local newspaper, the handouts, the Murph pop-up tent is great. We got stuff there. The weekly Fort Myers Beach radio talk show and the guest speakers. Not done any guest speakers on this topic for any groups or organizations, but that would be something
Plan, we roll it out.
as well. But the vegetation management plan, in my mind, is kind of low, medium, and high. Low would just be all new development, whether it's residential or commercial, and it's remove all invasives and make sure you don't put any more back. Very basic, simple, that would be it. Medium would be, and they have this in several areas around, because I've looked at different plans from Bonita Springs and Treasure Island and some other places where commercial properties have to put in a vegetation border if it's adjacent to residential properties, in addition to having removed all the invasives, etc. And then you can go high requirements where they have to put in a specific number of native plants in addition to the other requirements. You can also add in things like the trimming and pruning and removal of native plants, and you can go on and on. I mean,
Right.
some cities have 20, 30 pages of vegetation guidelines. So it's like, okay, where would we like to start?
What's the appetite for our community for our council to prohibit, some would say prohibitive vegetation management plans, then we start minimally with, you can't put any class 1 invasives in, basically. Or do we approach it to say, okay, well, if we're gonna tackle this thing, you might as well take it from A to Z and see what add to it. You said for things like, residential bordering commercial, there needs to be some kind of a buffer, a plant, herbaceous
and that
buffer.
seems to, the medium requirements are kind of falling in that middle of the road category.
A funky town. It's definitely not Sanibel per se in that respect, how everything's so, that was built into their land development code way back when.
Right, plus Sanibel has, if you take down a native tree, you have to put another one somewhere else on your property. There's a lot of very small pieces of property on Fort Myers Beach, and you wouldn't have room to locate another tree. So there's
Right.
that piece of it too. We're not just going to copy Sanibel. We need to come up with our own.
That wouldn't fit. But you have any opinions on that, Councilman?
It sounds like from what Chad is saying is that some of these like removing the invasives, that's required in just the C zone?
Not allowed to plant natives. Whenever somebody gets a triple CO permit from the state, they are required to remove exotics. No code that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it already exists just in that special case, that special region.
Is that only in the critical wildlife area?
Everywhere seaward of the 19, so more or less Sterrett Boulevard seaward, going a triple CO permit, typically there's in there to exotics. And then in our code, the only place I believe, from memory, but I believe there's somewhere in the developmental code, chapter 10, exotics.
To pull what kind of permit? Any type of permit?
Line. So if they're building a house or
Well, that
Building a
Mexican
pool.
Petunia property is in the, is east of, or west of the triple CL, right?
right, so but they're not pulling a permit.
Right, that's my question. There's no, so there's no
boy.
landscaping permit required.
Yeah, and the thing about triple CL permits, my understanding is once that permit's closed, the state's kind of
Yeah, see, that's where I was going, but that's the catch, they're already
Yeah,
in.
well, it's very specific, I think, is what you're saying
Right.
for that, but this would be more widespread, just to say, again, I feel like just as a minimum, we need to just stop the invasives. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the, number one has to be, because everything we're doing here is in vain, if people are, like I said, this homeowner's concerned that they have an invasive, and the next door neighbor who's got nothing in
Planting
their
them all,
lot says,
yeah.
listen, give them to me, I'll replant them right here. There's nothing's preventing me from doing it, and it cost me $8.99 for a 10-gallon pot over at Home Depot.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we need an ordinance.
even something very simple, I think maybe that'll have to be built into this, otherwise it's help us. But so then my question just was, and maybe we need the whole group is to say, is that something we want to pursue it to? Maybe we wait on that. I don't know if you do it in two phases. Number one is we stop the invasives, and then number two, we attempt to promote more native, I mean, there is, like I said, there is language that talks about the fact that you can't take out native trees, I think. Remember all the language. The big one was that you can't take out more than 3 a year or something, or 3 at a time or something.
our ordinance.
Yeah.
There's tree protection, but there are criteria for permitting, which typically met due to the size of our lots. I mean, you're going to the setbacks of a lot, trees there. Big tree.
Right.
Well, is there a way a subcommittee could be formed to look at that? Because that's really what David Outerbridge was interested in participating.
You can do that, but it can only be one MRF member. You guys can't get together in pairs and talk about stuff outside the public meeting.
Yes, I just volunteered myself to be that person. Okay.
Do what's been effective too, especially when we get something that's pretty beefy like this, is to say, okay, Rose, maybe you give examples of what other communities have done. Somebody else goes through and looks through, works with Chad to come up with our ordinance says in all the different places. Then figure out, then you come back and you present what you have to MRF.
Yeah, basically
Then,
another steering document to say how to.
And then you just decide as committee what you want to recommend.
You were saying he was interested in something like that, basically.
Yes, he really wanted to work
instituting a
on-
vegetation management plan.
He's interested in that portion
Wow,
of
that's
this.
pretty, isn't he?
Yes.
Advantage of that.
A lot of
Can I
times
meet with him and Chad?
you can. I mean,
I
you
mean-
can. One thing that a lot of towns have done, like if there's something that comes up, like Sanibel recently enacted a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, and so they came to town council. They came to their town council with a list of who had done this before. What were the
Right.
rules?
All the benchmarking, yeah.
Right, what do they have? What was it limited by volume? Was it limited by what are the fines imposed? you know, are there hours, all the kind of stuff on the table. So that's kind of the research that could be done too, to say, what do other people do? I mean, from maybe someone's really strict like Sanibel to someone who's don't really have anything at all.
Yeah, like I said, Bonita Springs has 20 or 30 pages of vegetation requirements, so they're,
Oh,
it's like, okay, I'm gonna stretch farther.
right.
But I do think that when this is done, it's really good to look at certification, because if the landscapers don't know, it doesn't really matter what you've come up with.
Hey,
Ordinance and certification.
last thing, 6.
Like we said, there's money there.
There, we can go after that. Maybe.
It's getting the most bang for your buck.
Goes back to targeting, what do we want
what's
to
the
target?
most offensive?
And it's not that, but it's like, you know, okay, if you're gonna replace plants, what are you gonna replace them with? If you're going to, you can tell somebody, you remove it, we'll put in another plant, but it'll be a twig
Right.
compared to what they had. If you wanna get into, they expect you to come remove plants, and their money's gonna go away in a hurry. If people even pick up on this, you know, you may also get people to say, you know, the other point about this is, we know these invasive plants are there, but they could have a Brazilian pepper behind their house that you didn't see.
Oh, yeah, there's probably a lot more. Yeah.
So there's plenty of people maybe who are not on the list that have something, or maybe there's some people who are interested, say, well, I'd love to have a master gardener come by and walk around my property and point out what plants I have.
That's what my HOA did when I bought. Or the landscaping committee that they didn't have. They did come out and they walked the whole property, which is 9 buildings and a straight linear line, and pointed everything out, recommendations. So I started a plan where we pulled out Cibola, which is the beet. Yeah. And the problem with a lot of communities way back when, those plants weren't considered invasive. Like that looked like the inkberry, which is a native, but the viola is not. You know, things kind of change over time and become invasive. So that's part of the problem, I think, with some established properties. Back in the day, they were not invasive.
Or we just didn't know any better.
There were, I mean, Brazilian pepper was used for landscaping. Ebola was used for. It was, you know, great.
Hardy,
Didn't
yeah.
use a lot of sense and
Got it.
coming, you know.
Coming.
Well, and I think we should target, if we were gonna target one thing, it should be a tree that you like cut down. It's like, I would think Brazilian pepper would be a great one to start with, but I also know it keeps coming back and keeps coming back, and you actually do need to use, yes, glyphosate with Roundup or some stump
Very
removal,
specific, yeah. You have to
some
paint
really
the stump.
strong herbicide to get rid of it,
And
actually
that's
get rid of it.
Australian pines too, because they volunteer out all over. They're not kind of like creeping around.
Right, they'll branch
That's
out.
good. See, that's someplace that we can actually give the homeowners a benefit from the town. That's not, I mean, it sure costs money because it's personnel time, but is there something in Public Works that has the training to actually paint a stump with whatever that particular pesticide is for, you know, Brazilian pepper?
Yeah, we've offered that to people before,
Yeah.
because we have the name of it's some pretty nasty stuff that we can on the stump, very targeted, and
Right. I mean, that's,
whenever we do the beach run that we've done the last couple of years, Growing Pines, we there and there is a house, a mid-island Astero with a hedge of Australian pines, which should be.
Person. Yeah, I think there's more than one. Some person has one. They're on a stero on the corner. It's Sally, you know. A cute little hedge. we want to select a plant to target for mapping purposes or for general, like Brazilian peppers, those over, we spot at least 50, 65 total.
You know, my gut feel is you'll be able to import, go into the spreadsheet, export a CSV file, import that into Google Maps.
Okay.
I've done that a long time ago, but you know, you just come up with exactly the format you want, make sure it's the same format that Google Map wants. You'll be able to do that, but now whether that'll, if you do it right, hopefully it's not a route, it's a spots, but.
Delimiters, yeah, it's all coming back. Spreadsheet. A lot of that actually back.
Okay.
If you want to send me a snippet, I can give it a try.
Well, the fact that that's not I mean, is that,
Or send me, I have Excel, you can send me the spreadsheet and I can.
yeah, I mean, is that
I can do.
something, since it's not private, can you share that sheet, the master database
Share it with.
with MERF members? Or those
Yeah,
that
I
are
mean, Rose
interested
has
in
it
receiving
there.
it, to see if there's a, which on how to export.
I think it's on a thumb drive somewhere. Again,
Cell shouldn't be too big, right?
just
It's like
putting
40 pages if you print it out.
putting a map.
That's 40 pages.
Well, there's no graphics and stuff, but I mean, the file size shouldn't.
Putting a map out there of all the exotics and where they're at. Again, you know, what's our end goal, and are we going to be able to accomplish that goal with?
I think it's a way of, like, you know, dividing and conquering. So like if we decide we're going to do a certain species or maybe a certain neighborhood, maybe that depends on who's interested. Because if we put this out and no one says anything, where do you go? But if there's like a neighborhood where there seems to be some interest in the natives or the invasives, and maybe we just concentrate on a neighborhood that's has the motivation. We don't know that until we get it out, and the map will be useful.
All right, so where can we leave this
Numbers.
agenda item?
Neighbors, see you
Didn't
doing it?
answer
Other
Rose's
neighbors get
question.
interested?
Yeah.
You're
What-
doing it, let's
That's
put
selecting.
together, blah, blah, blah,
Are we
blah,
going to
blah. Yeah.
start?
I'm going to start, I guess, with trying to coordinate David Outerbridge's schedule. Ads possibly. I mean, I might meet with him first and then include Chad and really start working on a management plan. I've already pulled a whole bunch of them from other communities, so.
Yeah, so you've done part of the benchmarking process.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I came up with low, medium, and high, but it's
Right.
like, some of them are extreme.
That's number 4 on our objectives.
It's number 5 in
Or
your
what-
strategies,
It's 5 on strategy, okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
which is
then-
4 on the objective.
Public awareness thing is getting a natural resource portion on our website. Those 4 items from Sanibel are under their natural resources.
There is a natural resource page, environmental science it's called. And it has a bunch of links to things. Then of course, add in place.
Minimal.
We can add to that.
So we need to have the town council's approval for adding stuff to the website? I think we
Yeah.
would.
Well, it depends on, you know, I wouldn't start with Chad. Town manager feels that he needs to have council approval to do something. If he's uncomfortable doing it, that, but the town council doesn't get involved in day-to-day operations of the staff. That's not really our job.
It'll probably make sense to let them know what we're doing. An update on this invasives and the fact that we're talking about looking at a vegetation management plan too, and coordination with it, because if we're trying to get rid of the invasives, then it makes sense not to allow anybody to replant, you know, just to come up behind us and plant them.
It's kind of interesting because it's like this whole survey is kind of the tip of the iceberg, because it leads to a vegetation management plan and to a certification of landscapers, that's the lasting,
Last piece there.
invasives will grow back, right? That's what they do. So, survey has a certain time, and if it's effective in getting a vegetation management plan and getting a certification program, then it's really done things for the town.
Let me ask you this quick question, Rose. What are the eradication methods for each of these species here? Obviously, anything that's over 6 foot tall would be a chainsaw, right? Yeah, right.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, the Brazilian peppers, though, you can actually use clippers on, they're not that.
Mm.
They actually, yeah.
And would all of those need to have their stumps painted with some type of
The trees, pretty much. I know carrotwood does, the Brazilian pepper does, the Australian pine does. Umbrella trees, I think, might be a done deal if you cut them. Most of the silk trees, I honestly do not know. Mexican petunias, I know you can pull them out and keep pulling. They're difficult.
Them out.
And the asparagus ferns have these little tubular things that you need to dig out, and air potato vines have the potatoes, and then they also have a deep root system, but they're probably one of the easier ones to get rid of if you pull the whole vine down.
I think they trying some biological control on the air potatoes. They have some kind of pest they've introduced.
Right, there's this little red beetle. So if you see an air potato plant that has lots of little holes in the leaves and red beetles, that's a good thing, because they're actually eating the plant and will destroy.
Had a introduction? Maybe?
Probably, yes, I have.
It's one of those things. Supposedly, it only eats air potato. Until it gets hungry, and then
Anything else? Yes. If
What
you
else
go,
have
if you
we
see the Murph
introduced?
pop-up tent on a day that I'm there with Master Gardeners, there's pictures of them there.
Their potatoes are gone. Then what are they feeding on?
Whatever's close, I bet.
Right?
Good plants.
Easier one to pull out.
The mangroves.
Manatees. They
Yeah.
start swimming and fire ants on flotsam. Okay.
And umbrella trees are also very popular. I mean, they're everywhere. I'll have purchased them from Home Depot and Lowe's.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer then.
Yeah,
Stop
they're.
that. I think that's as important as anything. Stop that. Umbrella trees. I probably would. 9 of those, huh? Okay, so we're can we do to move this along?
it's like Rose has already done a lot of the work.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's how it has to happen here usually, unless we can make assignments to come back with.
If you look at some, give the committee a few options. There's, a couple of vegetation management plans that other people have done. Assumably been approved by an attorney somewhere.
Mhm.
Then have the committee decide what you want to do what you want to recommend to town council. It's also good to, see what we already have dug in other parts of the code.
There's the part about the link to the town website. That's the
Go through the code to see what's in there, or I don't know, maybe Chad could direct us. It'd all be under 34. Is that our number, 34 environment? There's some divisions for vegetation management.
Our
That
code
trees.
currently,
Is that spread out all over, or?
with regards to exotics, I believe, let me just,
You said the C triple.
so section 10-420 plant material standards, so this is developmental orders, which, whenever a condo or something substantial is being built.
The LDO, did you say? And development order, did you say?
Right, so, one of the of removal of invasive exotic plants. The following highly invasive exotic plants must be removed from the developmental area. On for methods, purposes, gifts and species.
For example, the tree, the tree, there's
Protection?
protection, there's an area there that's like 3 or 4 or 5 pages with 3 pages of listed native trees in it.
Right.
Is that in that same area you're talking about?
No, that's different. So section 10 would be more commercial, multifamily. That's what we'll
Section 10.
typically issue developmental orders for. Whereas a protected tree permit or a vegetation permit, we typically see those more with single-family houses or pools being built. The trees are in or near the front of the proposed project.
People pull vegetation? Yeah, that's fairly common.
It's fairly just pro forma. Not much. I mean, the criteria for granting it is, there is preventing beneficial use of your property. There's not much. And then, requiring, you're taking out an oak tree.
That's contained in that area we were talking about the native trees, basically.
No, the vegetation, the exotic removal is in section 10 of the LDC.
Right.
Whereas I think tree protection is in section 14, more environmental.
And then the removal of invasive plants, would that be the town doing that, or we're going to subcontract with private landscapers?
I think that anything that really is expensive, go for the town to do.
Okay.
I think the model that we have, that sounds the best, if there's a number of things for people to come forward, is saying, you remove the, we'll give you a, won't be a like kind. If someone has buy Australia pine, we're not gonna have a big oak tree or something.
Could someone on the committee look with the landscapers on how much they charge? Like a 20-foot tree or?
Yeah,
think
we
it's
can do
pretty
that.
much custom.
We want to tackle that, call a landscaper and see what it costs to
Remove trees.
remove, basically, 6-foot umbrella tree, what's the
And you
most
got the
silk
list.
tree? or-
According to what we have on.
Right, and all of these also, do these need to be tagged and burned and all that kind of stuff, or some of these go into chippers, can they be taken off? Because that'll have something to do with the landscaper, whether he can just,
Yeah, asparagus fern and, air potato, asparagus fern, Brazilian. Yeah, most of these have, the first 4 at least. Well, not the Australian
Yes,
pine.
what
well, but
you
those are
want.
vines, but what we're
Yeah.
talking about really is,
The trees, yeah.
these are Australian pine,
That should be able to go in
the
chipper.
Scavola.
Carrot wood. Escovola, you probably need to burn.
One.
The beech is Escovola.
Scavola's gotta be burned.
Probably should be.
A lot of times they have these kind of, on the commercial or industrial composters, where they go up to a lot of heat, because some of the stuff, like we were talking about the straws, right?
Right,
They're only compostable,
at a certain temperature, right, yeah.
it kills stuff, but I don't know what these Scaver Bob is gonna do.
Okay, well,
Well,
we'll
that
just
would
get
be
prices.
checking with their price to
want-
see.
Shrubs as well as trees are on the list.
Yeah, because a Brazilian pepper that's over 6 feet tall is gonna be challenged to, though the town might be able to do it.
So the Australian pine, the
tree.
Brazilian pepper, and willow,
And the carrot wood, the lead tree, do you have the
Fir
list?
tree, lead tree, also
Yellow.
silk tree. I'm guessing they're just gonna say what size is it.
Or wanna look at it. You understand though, Rose, if we go through, because I think about a tree, it costs like $800 to pull it out and grind the stump and all that. If you have a $5,000 budget, that doesn't get you very far.
If it's in the middle of an open area, that's gonna be a lot less expensive than, nestled up next to a
and the
house and
location.
wires and stuff like that. 6-foot tree's not too bad. I mean, which one of these gets really tall besides the Australian pine?
Foot is actually tiny.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
If we're talking about 20 feet,
What are the
Might be
maximums
more
on
than
these? I mean, are lead trees, they get, I mean, how many of these
I
are
would
huge?
say they're gonna get 30 feet for that and the carrotwood at least. 30 feet for those two.
Uh-huh,
I've seen them.
30 footers?
The umbrella trees might get 20, 25, but they're kind of scrawny and.
Those are
easier one to
chefileras?
remove.
Umbrella trees are chefileras?
I know.
Yeah, I know.
Plant.
Holy crap.
Right down
Yeah.
in Maryland.
Neighbors got them, man, they're monsters.
Aren't they?
Holy cow. Okay. But those again aren't, not usually a single, I mean, they're branched, it seems. I mean, you know, you'd take off one, it's not a, like a red oak tree, which is, you know, which is, the red oak tree is the pounds.
Right, they're
The
pretty
trunk section
slim.
is huge, yeah.
They're pretty slim.
Actually, with a little bit too. Yeah,
Yeah, they'll be the easier ones to take.
like
gonna
you
be
said,
that
so those are 20, 25 feet. Petunias are small. And peppers, those are more bushy, right? They don't really
Right.
grow a single trunk,
Right.
correct? Yeah. Those aren't too bad, except for those Australian pines.
That's the thing too, because if we're going to, I mean, one thing we don't do as a representative of the town is recommend one vendor
Right.
and say to somebody, oh, you go to, Bob's Tree or Jim.
Unless unless they put out a RFP for, moving trees, then, orders to move them.
How many
Up
estimates?
to $5,000,
would you
$500 a
recommend?
tree or whatever it is,
How many what?
How many estimates?
At least 3 to 5. I mean, there seems to be a lot of different companies down here, but a lot of them don't remove trees. A lot of landscapers just do literally pruning and on.
If you had a backhoe, you could do the majority of this work. And yank them out, I mean, really. All the smaller, the bushes. That has borrow, who's willing to give their time to go pull trees.
His friend pulled out bushes. for the wind.
Oh, I dug out a lot
Yeah,
of trees.
I
With a
know,
pickup
yeah.
I've done, some pretty crazy things, actually.
One
Tree
bush was
removals
a 12
myself.
foot diameter blocking my.
Okay, so that'll be a good data point to have then.
I do think that, you're, finding other grants and things will help stretch the money. So
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that.
And I've looked briefly, a lot of them hired like back in the spring, so I'm hoping there's another round.
I'm sure there'll be another round, but I have to
Coming up,
tell you, as
yeah.
part of that application, I'm almost positive they're gonna say, does your municipality have, have legislation that won't allow them to just replant the same tree? Right? I mean, that's gotta be a prerequisite to giving money to remove an invasive.
I'm pulling out a Brazilian pepper and putting in a chefalera.
Yeah.
We laugh, okay. If anything, we've identified that we have to have vegetation management plan. Yeah, that's really important, so I'll peek around with that too. Okay, so, I thought I smelled an early dismissal, but it doesn't look like, I have one, actually, we will. So shall we move on to the next item? Okay. I'd like to make a motion that Rose Larkin is our asset of the meeting today.
Yeah, second it.
Second that, all in favor that Rose is our asset of today's meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Is that like a Shadow Murphy?
Yeah.
Paysetter award. She gets the Paysetter award for today's
Absolutely.
She's a rose among thorns.
meeting. Yes.
Aw.
Rose among thorns. Very good. Okay, so we will keep this next item. Dark skies. Fairly brief, I guess, just because of the amount of information. So I don't have the steering document because I don't feel like I was in a position to really begin steering it. I decided that I needed to start by looking at, and that's one maybe I should ask you to look at since it's kind of brief, is our current lighting standards ordinance. I mean, we do have an outdoor lighting ordinance. So I had some questions I actually had put together for that. is this light, you know, the big one is this enforced? I mean, do we have, so all LDOs, new construction, remodeling, do those all have lighting plans that have to be submitted
As of late, yes.
as of late? Okay, and then who reviews those, from what town staff?
Combination of planning staff and environmental staff.
Okay, so combo, planning staff. Okay, because there is, I mean, there's wording in here. To give you the 1,000-foot level here, basically it's saying, so the applicability of this ordinance is that all new luminaires, regardless of whether development order is required, must comply with the provisions and standards of this division. So it's basically saying that everything needs to follow this.
I think that's mostly though for multifamily and commercial.
That's one of my questions too. Is this is multifamily or commercial? Though I don't see that it actually really states that. There's areas where it calls out exemptions that says if you're single family, it doesn't apply. Or if, you know, but I don't think it actually says specifically that this is for commercial and multifamily. You know, goes through the definitions, which are all pretty straightforward. Applicability, yeah, it doesn't matter who it says. So here's the exemptions from the provisions. Emergency lighting, outdoor lighting that uses fossil fuels, kerosene, bottled gas, low wattage holiday decorative lighting, and lighting for public roads. So those are the exemptions. Technically, single family, unless it's called out, applies to this. If I understand it properly, I've read it just a few times, but so if I continue to go through it, there's technical standards for the lighting. So basically, it contains minimum and maximum standards that apply whenever outdoor lighting is provided. A couple exceptions. One is artificial lighting near sea turtle habitat, which we're all familiar with. That's part of the sea turtle ordinance. And if anything's not addressed, standards of the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America will apply. It doesn't really go into exactly what standards there are. But basically illuminance. So one of the first technical standard they have really is luminance, which means, you know, brightness, let's say, right? So it's foot candles per square foot. And they have minimums and maximums. So for instance, parking lots. Here it does say multifamily, Chad. Medium vehicular pedestrian activity is a minimum of 0.8 foot candles and a maximum of 3.2, which is actually pretty bright.
So I think if you look in the permitting section and then in the compliance section, you know, all applications for development orders or building permits, except for single-family and two-family building permits, must provide photometric data, et cetera.
That's for permitting.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm, you know, for a
I do have that
single-family house, I
highlighted,
can't
yeah.
require photometric data is the point.
What's that?
For a single-family home, I can't require photometric data.
Okay. Right.
So
The
to your point
permitting,
about the
you're saying.
applicability. And the compliance, section,
But I mean, as part of the permitting, I mean, right now, like you said, currently you're starting, you know, they're starting to do it. Do they provide photometric data? Initial foot candle output for proposed and existing fixtures on site.
who is they? The applicant?
The applicant. They do provide all that, and we do go and,
For commercial and for, family, yes.
we do pay
We
somebody to
review
do it.
we review the photometric data provided by the lighting engineer.
That's anywhere on the island, not necessarily, on the beach, okay? And do you guys do the site verified foot candle reading?
Have not.
Do not. Letter of substantial compliance. So you can either do it or get a letter of substantial compliance by a registered professional engineer. Marco, that typically I did?
Something I've been involved in.
Okay.
environmental staff.
Okay. You know, during that the meeting, the joint meeting, that our friend Joe from the ex-FPL guy was saying, one of the reasons you have to throw more, if there's a lot of light, you have to throw even more light to neutralize that light, right?
Yeah, we've definitely had runaway lighting, district, Old San Carlos, to the point where you're seeing lights that are, you know, way up the boulevard there, from the beach.
Well, one of my questions is for single family though, they have to comply with the rest of the ordinance, correct? I mean, not that they have to permit it. I mean, for instance, lamp standards, again, I don't know if that's, you know, they have to be type lamps and colors that are in harmony with the adjacent community.
I think we have some light trespass language in there that they,
There is no creating a mix of colors, but they do say that there's luminaire standards that say you have to use fully shielded, full cutoff luminaires with recessed bulbs and flat lenses are only permitted fixtures for outdoor lighting. I don't think that's the case at all in this community. Again, if I'm reading this properly, this is applicable to everybody, I think. You don't have to have a permit to put the light up, but it has to be this type of light, correct? So, and then there are some exceptions saying that if, you know, if they're 260 lumens, you know, they can be left unshielded, that they don't, you know, they have opaque tops, so none of these round, you know, just round lights. Some that have outputs of 1,000 lumens have to be partially shielded, provided the bulb's not visible and things like that. I mean, they're not, I mean, my guess is it's an ordinance in writing only. I mean, it's something that if it's not forced, then it doesn't exist. Light must not be triggered by activity off the property, so when you're walking, you know, whenever you're walking down the street at night and all these lights are popping on like crazy, I mean, that's technically illegal. So the question is do you really go after an ordinance when in fact, why would you do a new ordinance, modernize an ordinance if it's not going to be enforced either? So that's my question too. I mean, do we pursue that? Is the question to the rest of, not to you guys, you know,
Yeah.
but to everybody else. I mean, I think the answer is, I suppose, yes, but do you? I mean, if this is any indication of, you know, the appetite for the town to worry about lighting ordinances, what's our chances to get something like dark skies? Unless it's a new awakening within the town. Actually, I mean, that's sort of what I'm saying. Follow
Yeah,
me?
because I know people that don't meet these standards. And
Yeah. I mean, there's
it's the enforcement, and it's difficult because it's at night.
to me, I think that would make it easier.
Well, it would, but I
Driver,
guess
yeah.
who's employed at night to do this?
Well, there's a guy that goes around the island at about 5 o'clock in the morning every morning. Code enforcement that goes up and down all the streets. A neighbor that rides his bikes 14 miles every morning, goes down every street and he sees him as he's, you know, crawling around looking around. So I mean that's a good thing, I suppose, but he's not obviously worried about lighting. So I mean, there's even information in here about light trespass too. I mean, you're not allowed to have any of your light trespass onto your neighbor's property. And I can tell you, you can look down my canal and it's like, you know, there's spotlights everywhere going across people's. I mean, I've had complaints from people, not from my property, but other people complaining about other people. So, I mean, before we even got into the whole dark skies thing, that was my question. As I read this, I got a little bit more pessimistic about.
In other words, these are our laws, but they aren't necessarily enforced. And
Correct, yeah.
if we were to enforce them, a lot of this dark sky would already be accomplished.
Well, some of you got the basic I mean, there's, if you just jump into the basic tenets, the five principles for responsible outdoor lighting, you know, every light has to have a clear purpose, and even in here, it talks a little bit about that. Light should be directed only to where needed, and that's kind of covered. I mean, okay, not sufficiently, but that is in here in some wording. Low light levels, I mean, technically, basically use the lowest light possible. Here, there are actually minimums and maximums on lighting. And I don't know how you would, you're gonna run around with a light meter for single residences, how they would, you know, since they don't have to be permitted, they would never have to go through any kind of a meeting, the ordinance by permitting, since they're with, you know, they're included in this. Controlled, they should only be used only when useful. I mean, there's stuff in here even for, I think there's also there's a sign, as you guys well know, there's a sign ordinance, but there's actually also, because it's talked about in the definitions about non-essential lighting means lighting that is not necessary for an intended purpose after the purpose has been served. For example, lighting for a business sign. Architectural accent lighting and parking lot lighting may be considered essential during business activity hours, but is considered non-essential once that activity or business is concluded. You've got a barber shop that's closed at night, you're not supposed to have a sign, you know, you're not supposed to have your lights on, technically. Let me see, it actually is covered in here. All externally illuminated signs must be lighted by shielded fixtures mounted at the top of the sign and aimed downward. I'm sure all of our signs in town are not that way, are lighted signs. So that's you know, that's a question. And the last one here is just color. Use warmer colored lights where possible. I mean, that's not, you know, a lot more to it. These are just like principles. It gets in there a lot more specifically when you go into the, you know, the minimum requirements for all communities, dark skies. Fully shielded or full cutoff standards, restrictions on total amount of unshielded lighting. Also, you address overlighting, energy density caps, lumens per acre caps, or minimum luminance specifications, maximum luminance specifications, which we sort of have here. There's maximum luminance. So the question is, if we're, you know, really digging into this, what do we do with our current lighting standards ordinance? Ooh, this would be code enforcement's responsibility, is that correct?
For compliance?
Yeah, I mean for compliance. Yeah, if we said tomorrow, the whole community said, hey, you know what, we want, you know, our lighting ordinances enforced. I would go to the town manager and he would give the code enforcement people the green light to go out and start writing everybody up.
Nobody's stopping it right now. I mean, I've pursued some issues that.
No, I'm not suggesting you don't. My point is, I mean, this is just one of the ordinances. I imagine there's a number of them in the, you know, in our LDC that just, a lot of it has to do with complaints, right? I mean, if nobody's ever complained about the lighting here, then why would anybody run around and enforce it? There's probably been a case where one neighbor got mad at another and looked it up and ran into town and probably talked to town staff.
We've had several light trespass issues. You know, it's difficult with the lighting standards. For instance, we've asked a lot of people to use the town bulbs. Those are condos. We asking those people to revise their LDOs because they put in a new bulb for season.
Right.
Whenever you do see kind of runaway lighting that's all of a sudden reflecting off the clouds, you know, that may be something for concern.
Well, I mean, you're right, that's the concern, is this, do we have, you know, right now, are people satisfied with their ability to see, are we, I think in the end, it's about personal comfort with lights that are in your community. So if you're walking around at night or whatever it might be, or you have a neighbor, like you said, that has, you know, put up a lot of glare and you can't see the stars, or trespassing into your yard, that's one thing. But on a larger level, is the community saying, I can't see the stars anymore? And I think in general, our sky glow on the southern end of the island isn't nearly as bad as it is on the north end. I know our neighbors are having an issue with it. I mean, you know, Sanibel is gonna be writing a letter, I think, to town council about the possibility of increased sky glow with the lighting project, and also we know that Sanibel's, Sanibel, SCCF is having issues with potential disorientations because of the sky glow from Fort Myers Beach, as well as Cape Coral. So I think they're going to be writing a letter to the town council as well. So I think there it's a possibility of the increased. I mean, we know that I think on the north end that the lighting standards aren't even close to being followed. You know, whether or not it's happening within the, you know, the residential areas, I'm sure there's people that don't like the glare on certain lights and stuff, but is it in fact presenting a problem? I'm not sure it is, but my concern, I mean, and the reason I'm bringing this up, this is my opinion on this, obviously. But do we pursue something like dark skies? You know, actually a true dark skies community designation, and we currently have this. Question, any guidance from our leader, council liaison?
If it's a big bite, recommend going in front of council and explaining what you're looking at, and have the consensus of council move forward on before you take.
Right.
And you have a point, you know, I mean, one kind of selling point is to say, you know, there's different ordinances need to be refreshed, and there's different bits here and there, and that if you can sell the dark skies as a prism.
Sure, I mean, that's,
all,
yeah, I mean, that's what they talk about is.
Because I'm right in the mind of everybody now with the lighting project anyway.
Exactly, and I think that's obviously what's probably got us started on it, although we had spoken about it in previous, you know, Murph, while you were chair, I think we talked about it a little bit at one point.
You can explain to you what is you're looking at, and then just ask the council if it's worth moving forward with it.
Right. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should, but I'm wondering if we should wait for the other members to fit in on, or
Yeah, we can do that. I don't think it's pressing per se, but,
or should we do it before the lighting decisions are made?
You guys showed up, you're a quorum, I think you can make whatever decision.
We can make whatever decisions, okay.
yeah, and I think they would probably be amenable to this anyway, but. Yeah, I mean, that's
Yes,
probably.
I think it's to the benefit of the beach. It's definitely to the benefit of the beach to join this dark sky and take whatever steps are necessary to turn our lights off at night.
George, though, and I looked at the dark skies community,
Mhm.
the whole list. There's a bunch in Texas, California, in the Midwest, and I didn't see one that was a cold. The only islands I saw were like Germany, and they were largely uninhabited. I was discouraged to see where is Harmony? Harmony, Florida. Harmony, Florida is not an dark skies community. It's something distinction. I don't know. There was a separate category, and I thought, oh, that's a coastal island. I thought, well, why do we write the wheel? Because they even had all of these locations, their applications
Mhm.
for everything that they put together. Wow, you don't have to rewrite the wheel.
Right,
What you
right.
could do is pick and choose, tailor to here.
Mhm.
That was one thing, you know, up in the mountains in Idaho.
A lot of it's about
Colorado.
astronomy. I mean, that's really where dark sky's got its legs.
Yeah.
That you're missing. I mean, as you know, the statistics, if you read them, I mean, there's only 2% of the world that can see the Milky Way anymore. You know, 98% of at least the United States, you can't, in populated areas, you can't see the Milky
For
Way
us,
anymore.
it's so important for our life and
Right, sure, absolutely.
ecosystem.
Would agree.
Something definitely worth.
And is it
getting
doable?
going on.
Is it doable?
Go through this. I mean, it's pretty rigorous. I mean, it is and it isn't. I have to admit, I'm not an expert here. After going through our lighting ordinance, I thought, actually, I was I went through it in February, I think, when we first, Chad gave it to me, and then I looked it up again and went through it, and I mean, and there are standards. The fact that, like, mercury vapor lamps are prohibited on the island. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some on here. I'm not, mercury vapor? Are they all
Steve.
pressure or, low pressure sodium? I might be using those two, but also, I mean, the fact that they're supposed to be directed down, and, there's a lot of, you can drive down a stair and see all the spotlights that are projecting out, and that's a big part of it. So, I mean, that would be nice to get rid of that, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Some of the projects coming in with the town, I think there might even be some of the uplights on trees.
Oh, there are plenty of lights on
I mean,
trees.
thinking, in the Bayfront Park, on Times Square and Bay Oaks.
Oh, for the town itself, you're saying? Yeah,
I
right.
mean, the first step should be town to adhere to
Always
this.
the municipal, adherence, right? But, I mean, the fact is it's like anything else. There's good lighting design, there's bad lighting design. I think, you don't almost, I think if you hit the principles themselves, not even if you're a dark skies community, because that would be an achievement. That would be something if somebody wanted that ecotourism, dark skies, the use of their emblem on all of your marketing and stuff. I think there's a big value in that. But, again, just adhering to the principles of dark skies, I think, would make it an enormous change. With meaning just using good lighting. I mean, down lighting, first of all. I think if everything was downlit, it'd be amazing what difference that would make.
I do think that this seems like it's really made for a larger town, if you will, because there's all things you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have events, dark sky events put on by some like astronomy club or.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Pittsburgh is doing dark skies. I mean, the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that's huge.
Oh,
Huge. Their mayor had a big announcement. It was pretty recent, but
that'll be remarkable.
yeah, for a town that big. Like I said, a lot of them are in the desert and in smaller communities, like you were saying, much smaller communities. I had to keep looking up where the heck these places were. I never heard of them. Malibu actually did, so that's actually is a coastal town, I suppose, right?
Oh, okay.
California, that's when I found. I benchmarked. Yeah, I downloaded theirs, but so. I guess maybe, I think maybe that'd be a good thing to do is just ask it's interesting because we've got the street light going on now, so they're, probably going to say now they're trying to pour it on now, but we actually just ask them if they have, if that's something they're interested in, right? They have to have their backing in order to pursue this. An advisory board, is it ill-advised or is it advised?
It's advised. You could see the space launches from Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center a whole lot better if there were.
Well, I mean, again, I tell you what, it just
Would be able to from here?
I
Yeah.
watch
I
them all
don't
the
know where
time.
it's Cape.
I've got some photos that I can show you that I took from the Grand.
yeah, I mean, we do have a nice sky at night. I go out, I mean, I'm out all the time. It's nice, but it could even be nicer. It'd be nice to be able to see it in the Milky Way. I don't know if that'll ever happen because we got Fort Myers right here, and you've got all these other, you got Cape Coral and everything else.
We're at sea level and a subtropical thing with a lot of humidity in the.
Yep. Okay, then, so for that agenda item, that's what we're gonna do. We'll talk to the town council here at,
And I think be positive, let them know that we've looked at these lighting standards and we think that we can comply with a lot of this dark sky criteria
right,
with just a little bit of attention to some of the details that might have been
right.
forgotten.
Yeah, to say basically where it started is let's benchmark where we're at and where we're headed, and when I look at where we're at, it's actually better than what we thought.
Yeah, and that this is a very positive thing for the town in many ways, and that,
I mean, I think it needs to be modernized. I don't know, this was back in 2011 the only thing I saw here was that it was saying that existing outdoor lighting, light pole height requirements do not apply to existing light poles. Existing light fixtures must be brought into compliance with this code by January 2010. Any fixtures replaced after the date of the adoption of this code must be replaced with fixtures that comply with the standards established herein. Luminance levels specified in this code apply to all outdoor lighting. It's just not commercial. And we don't know for sure if these are reasonable minimum and maximums. Are these current? I don't know. That's something we'd have to look at, but
It's obviously over 10 years old.
correct. Right. So, but even the wording I think needs to be modernized, but so the alternative, I mean, the question may be also to ask whether or not you want to modernize it and institute principles within the IDA without necessarily pursuing the whole, attempting to actually become a dark sky community. So we'll find out. All right?
Yes.
Sure, we'll talk to the council and see what they think.
I don't even mention
Oh, LEDs
anywhere in there, they talk about incandescent.
weren't even around commercially yet, I don't think, in 2010. Incandescent, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, with the proliferation of LED white light, I mean, lighting, it's gotten worse, so there probably needs to be modified here, but,
At least they're not talking about whale oil lights or something.
right, well, they do talk about propane and kerosene lights, but.
Did mention those lights.
Okay, so we will sort of table dark skies then. Still think it's of interest. A Good Citizen Award, AKA the Murphy. Got any Murphys?
No new ideas.
Hope you have some in the bank.
One in the back, I think.
That sand dollar one, but we said we're saving that for when.
We do have the $10. We have two in the bank.
Okay.
So the other one I have was this couple from North Fort Myers that were boating, and they brought they saw a turtle get hit, and they brought it, and was there, it's good to have in the bank. I've got their names and a photo. Quick, can I have your names and a photo?
That's a good one because trail season's kind of winding down now.
Do that. He's trying to get hold of me. The game must be starting now.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Yeah, I've got it, Colbera Simmons family, I think, and I have a photo, and I think I have even a phone number I can, first names.
Writing the next story.
Or not. Next story has actually already been submitted. Rose, actually, yours rolled in actually before Doc's did, and Doc's was due on the 1st. Those have been submitted. Let me find it here. So, last meeting, because we had a gap there, we missed a meeting. Doc was supposed to be in actually technically June. Rose was in July. Wendy was August, and Rob. Then we reset it for September was Doc. October was Rose. Is that still okay? Is there a timing thing there?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be, and he was going to.
Did turn in an article recently.
Yeah, but that's they're typically due the 1st of the month is how I'm doing, that we said we were going to do it.
Well, you're telling me September 1st. Oh, you got it.
Right. I was happy to
Just
see
like,
it, because it came in before, I think, his. I was like, well, I guess we'll cut Doc out.
Didn't you mind earlier then?
The rotation. No, I had, we're still technically, November, right? Do you have a note that says that? You have a note that said that you were November? Yeah, so I did. And Rob was December, and so, okay?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you're set then. But
I
Okay,
can
well,
work on something else.
well, there's also sometimes, based on the subject area, there's timing things, so that's probably still okay, because we'll probably have more to say on invasives then, right? So, very well written too. So, so yeah, and then I was gonna investigate with Chad to try to put it on a calendar, so I'll still get with Chad on that.
For y'all's writing?
Or like when they're doing everything. Had made a mention that it would be great to have it on a,
A reminder on your phone?
yeah, yeah. I'll put it on the calendar, so what I need to do is write out a reminder. I can put my own and just send out the reminder for who it is, so. And, last thing, I was going to, doesn't necessarily have to be an agenda item here, but I thought maybe we would put a request into the Public Works, that we put some cigarette disposal areas in Times Square.
An issue?
It is an
Yes,
issue.
it's a big issue.
Yeah.
I'm down there every week.
Every week,
Have you-
and,
the Public Works?
I've emailed the public comment section like months and months and months ago, and I've brought it up here twice, but
as
what
an,
else would you like me to email?
as an agenda item, but I feel like it doesn't, it's, as her part of her members' report, she's brought it up in a couple of months, and I've had it written here, and I thought, well, it's not really necessarily an agenda item, I don't think. I think it's a matter of
Yeah,
just a corrective action.
Okay, yeah,
So-
I'll send
that-
Chelsea a email.
Yeah, because it's pretty well carpeted there. I mean, if there's no place to put it, and there's no,
and because we're now having all these events, like the offshore boat races, and then it
Island
will come
Hopper's
up to the
coming.
holidays and the winter, and then the New Year's, it's just like buried in, there are a lot down there.
there's a lot. I went and checked it out when I was down there for that. So, I don't know how they manage that, but great.
And some people have mentioned like Publix has those cigarette butt collection containers, so if there was like 5 of them put around entrance points to there.
Yeah,
Otherwise, actually, what I see is on the garbage cans themselves, on the,
Some of them.
yeah, they're smashed wherever you can sort of
On the
smash
round
them, and
ones,
I'm not sure if they're throwing them into the garbage can afterwards or not, but that's not very safe either, so.
Right, I think they're afraid of starting a fire. I mean,
Exactly,
so they're
right,
just
so you put them on the
on the ground, or they're putting them in the big planters that the Estero Island Garden Club monitors.
Ah, right. That should be an easy one, right? That's something, I mean, what's the best way to communicate? You just sending Chelsea
I'm
one that
sending a note just now.
came out of our meeting? Okay, thank you, Chad.
You figure if it saves some pickup time for the staff that are out there picking up all the
You
cigarette
can't
butts.
pick
then
them all up. There's no way. There are literally, if I go down every week, well, I pretty much do, there's hundreds. I mean, they sweep them off
I
the
see them all
paved
the time
section,
too.
the section that has the little sweeper machines where it's paved, the colored stones, but the whole landscaped area that's mulched, it's just covered in cigarette butts. They also go down the drain that's right next to the pier.
That solved. Hopefully.
That's a quick fix, hopefully.
Okay, good. So having said that, so the Cobura Simmons, I think is their family, there's a motion to include, make them our Murphy winner for this next month.
Second that.
Discussion? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we got that. Rose, you're on too with the October, with the next article. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Oh yeah, here I have $100 in the bank. Okay. And I think members' items and reports.
Got it, cigarette butts in Times Square, so.
Okay, see that on it. Okay. I personally don't have any, I don't think, this month.
Okay, turtles are winding down, but we don't have a final report, maybe for the next meeting, but I want to talk about the fade straws that we okayed. I have an ongoing experiment where I took one of those straws and I attached it to a string, and it's in the canal behind me, and it's covered with black goop, but it's not decomposing.
It's not,
I don't know, how long did they say we're supposed to wait to see something?
90 days?
Okay, so it's not quite that. But I would like to say that they are using those same fade straws at the Philadelphia International Airport.
they're good.
That man's been around, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll be patient about my report on this
Now,
straw
Rob
decomposing.
did his own, and he said it was.
Did it decompose?
He said it was pretty quick too. I can't remember what his number was. He
There
gave
must
us,
be
but-
something wrong with my
But I
water?
should do it myself. I haven't done it myself. I said I was going to. I haven't melted one in the canal yet.
Saying like Pennsylvania's got dark skies and fade straws there.
That's right, we're on it.
Yeah.
They were using them at Krabby Bill's up in Indian Rocks.
Well, I do see some green ones around town still.
But far less, definitely.
Yeah.
Far less.
I mean, there's still the ones he brought in, he collected around town. Those are still being, I think, for the most part, might still be used. Slurpees, I think Slurpees.
That's it for me.
Very good.
I have nothing.
Nothing. Okay, so. Public comment? Set agenda for the next meeting?
I'm gonna say this is out of order, but I was just thinking about the Murphy, that the another possibility would be the Carlos Point and Castle Beach condos for cooperating with the WC.
Photos.
Islands in.
That's the third one, Islands in.
And then, yeah, the birds don't like that habitat, but the hatchlings like the forage there, she said.
Yeah, it's close to established vegetation dune. They're just
Their
kind of out
willingness
there in
is
the
there,
middle.
yeah, they
Right.
basically gave them the same permissions as the other two, so whether or not the birds like to nest there or not, it's not their problem. So,
Should we ask Rebecca for a photo when she's meeting with the representatives, or?
good.
Photo
Of the the HOA people, I guess. With
Well, if
the
you want a picture of like nesting birds,
Is that what we want, or do we want a picture of the people?
nesting birds, or
Birds?
actually maybe I think that exists, there's probably,
tons of them. I
Okay, good.
have some, I think.
yeah, I mean, I think of the whole area, actually, would be nice. Right, the actual bird nesting area.
Yeah,
And
with
look.
those condos
Yeah.
background or something, yeah.
Okay, so, bank two then. Timing there would be, the end of the bird season is going
Already
now?
over.
Not officially over, is it?
I think nesting is over.
Shorebird nesting season.
That's done.
Do you think that timing is about, I mean,
timing. Right.
we're out of order? Now, the guy who taught us that we have to reverse our motions and
That's
stuff.
right.
Have to teach us
Or
how to
should
do
we
it
save it
again.
for the next meeting?
Timing's probably best now. I'm sorry it was late, but maybe the timing is better now for the condos.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
so
it
too.
is.
Help them actually choose water spray too instead of the purple glyphosate. So I make a motion to reverse my original motion for the Murphy. Seconded.
I'll second. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, you have to second or
I
has to
second
reverse their
your
second. No, you have
reversal
to-
motion.
You have to reverse your second.
What is this now? I have to stand on my head and do what?
You have to stand on your head, close your eyes, rub your stomach, and say, "I reverse my second."
I think you're probably good.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Okay, so I'll make a new motion that we.
Probably need to vote on it though, since
Okay, so that's motion. Reverse motions need to be voted on. Discussion. Anybody opposed? Okay, reversal of the motion carries. New motion is we recognize for the Murphy Award for this coming month, the Castle Beach,
And
Islands End,
Carlos Point.
Carlos Point condominiums
Photo?
for their fine stewardship and that's all we need to know.
Right.
For their fine stewardship.
You have your photo.
Oh, there it is, yeah, I'll ask her for that. Stuart, do I got a second?
Second that,
Okay.
that I'm not on mine.
Any discussion? Nope. Anybody opposed? Nope, motion carries. There are new Murphy Award winners.
Thanks,
And we
Bill.
will bank the turtle one. Turtle bank. I was thinking about that actually when she talked about it. Here, not the other. Okay, so any other motions? I motion to adjourn at 5:32.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. The ayes carry it, 3-1. Meeting is over.
Notice that was a pretty quick second when he said adjourn.